Hello everybody and welcome back to Dollar Tree Dinners. My name is Rebecca and I have a very exciting episode for you guys today. I think it's more exciting for me than it probably is for you, but that's okay. As we get closer to Thanksgiving and as Dollar Trees get more Thanksgiving related items, a lot of Dollar Trees are starting to get canned pumpkin puree in stock. I have several cans here and that is the central theme of this video. We are doing 4 different recipes using pumpkin puree. So on the roster we have 3 Starbucks and 1 Crumbl. So I have a Starbucks pumpkin cream cold brew. I have already tried and tested this. I'm going to be sharing the recipe for you guys today. We are going to attempt to make a Starbucks pumpkin cream cheese muffin. We're also going to do a pumpkin loaf, which is essentially kind of Starbucks related, but not entirely, we'll see. And then lastly, a Crumbl style pumpkin roll cookie. And now hopefully all of these turn out the way that I want them to. We shall see. First, let's go ahead and start with the Starbucks pumpkin cream cold brew. Now, these can be pretty expensive. They're between $6 to $7. So I was definitely very excited to figure out how to make it at home. Now, I did have to cheat a little bit because one of the ingredients that I needed, my Dollar Tree was out of. So I did have to go buy it somewhere else, but otherwise all of the ingredients can be found at Dollar Tree. And your Dollar Tree may have it even if mine didn't. One more disclaimer, my nails are looking a little rough, so bear with me there. I apologize. I do them myself, so it's going to be a couple days before I get a chance to sit down and redo them, but I'm currently missing a few nails on this hand. Breaking down the Starbucks pumpkin cream cold brew, there are 3 main essentials that we need. So we need the cold brew coffee, we need a syrup of some kind, a vanilla syrup, and then we need a pumpkin sauce. Now the pumpkin sauce is to make the pumpkin cold foam that sits on top of the coffee. So we do have to prep all 3 of those in advance. This is something you can't just whip up the day of. You have to start this process about 24 hours ahead of time. So on a day off, get this process started, and then it's pretty quick to throw together once you have all of the ingredients prepped. So we're gonna start with the cold brew. You can use any coffee to make cold brew, but when it comes to Dollar Tree specifically, I do recommend one of these smaller bags. There is a lot of variance in the types of coffee you can get at Dollar Tree. This is the Harry and David breakfast blend. They also have like a Jim Beam bourbon vanilla. They have a Harry and David vanilla creme brulee. You can really do any of them, but again, I would go with a smaller coffee because it's gonna be a little bit better quality than some of the larger bags. And then I also use a French press. Now, mine came from IKEA, but you can get them a lot of places. Even check local thrift shops. You might be able to find some there. This one is I'm not quite sure how many ounces this is. I will try to look up how many ounces this is and give you that information, but I think it's the easiest method for making cold brew at home. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put the entire bag of coffee into the French press. Now, I believe this is around 1.5 cups of grounds, maybe a little more, a little less, but it is a 4-ounce bag of coffee and I'm using the entire thing. The next element is cool filtered water. That's what Starbucks uses. It is cold brew, so you do want to use cool or cold water, not hot water. And essentially I'm going to pour this over the grounds, making sure that they are all wet. And you see this metal ring at the top of my French press. That is my guide for how full I make this. Once my coffee has kind of risen to the top here, then I'm going to take the plunger of the French press and gently press down until it is below that metal ring. I'm not going to press it all the way down, so I kind of submerge the coffee about halfway down the French press, and then we're going to set this aside for 20 to 24 hours. The second element is the pumpkin pie flavored sauce, and for this you will need a can of sweetened condensed milk, or in the case of Dollar Tree, sweetened condensed creamer. I also have some vanilla extract, some brown sugar, my can of pumpkin puree, and some pumpkin pie spice. We've moved over to the stovetop, so into a saucepan I'm going to add the entire can of the sweetened condensed creamer or sweetened condensed milk, depending on what you have, a 1/2 cup of brown sugar, 1/2 cup of water, 1/2 cup of the pumpkin puree, and a tablespoon of pumpkin pie spice. I am going to whisk this all to combine, and I'm going to heat this up over medium to medium-high heat just until it comes up to a boil. We are now boiling. I'm going to reduce the heat to low and I'm going to let this simmer uncovered for about 10 to 15 minutes or so, just to let all the flavors meld together and reduce off some of the water. Once your sauce has simmered, the last thing that we have to do is strain it. This is going to be to remove any of the pumpkin solids so that we don't have a gritty sauce. So I'm going to run it through a fine mesh strainer just over a bowl here. And I use a spoon to kind of stir it back and forth to make this process a little bit faster so that we're not just letting gravity do all the work. So this is what I mean. There is still a good bit and you can see how kind of gritty that is. So we're trying to get out all of that grit so that we have a nice smooth and creamy sauce. So this is all going to be thrown away unless you have another use for it. I'm sure you could toss it in some baked goods like some muffins or something like that. And I am going to transfer our sauce into a jar for storing it in the fridge. And this will keep in the fridge for about a week. I'm going to set this aside and let it cool before I do jar it up and put it in the fridge. And in the meantime, we can work on our third element, which is the syrup. And for this, all we're going to use is brown sugar, vanilla, and water. As I mentioned that, I realized I actually forgot to put the vanilla in the pumpkin sauce. So you need about a teaspoon of vanilla extract in your pumpkin sauce. So to make our syrup, I'm going to be adding about a cup of brown sugar into a saucepan. This is going to make a good bit of syrup. We're essentially making a brown sugar version of a simple syrup. And to this, I'm going to add 1 cup of water. Pretty much identical to how we made the pumpkin sauce. I'm going to heat this over medium to medium-high heat, bring it up to a boil. And that's really all we have to do. We're just trying to dissolve and melt the brown sugar. After your syrup has come to a boil, you can add in about a tablespoon of vanilla extract. The vanilla is what's going to make our syrup actually have flavor beyond just being sweet. So you don't have to be light-handed with it. You can add a fairly good amount to it depending on how strong you like your syrup. And once it's cooled slightly, we can transfer this into a bottle for storing in the fridge as well. You technically don't have to store this in the fridge. I've kept plenty of syrups on the counter. So it's up to you how you want to do it. But if you want it to last a little bit longer, you might want to store it in the fridge. So with that, we have our 3 components prepped. So we have our pumpkin sauce, we have a brown sugar vanilla syrup, and then we have our cold brew coffee. And both of these are gonna sit overnight, the cold brew at room temperature, and then I'm gonna put both the sauce and the syrup in the fridge. So I'll check back in with you tomorrow, and through the magic of editing, it is now. It's the next day and we have our cold brew, we have our syrup, and we have our sauce. I'm going to set aside our syrup and our sauce because we do need to filter our cold brew. The French press does a good job of filtering, but there still could be some residual ground. So what I like to do is take a strainer and a coffee filter, and I'll place my coffee filter in my strainer, and then I will begin to pour my cold brew through the coffee filter. Yeah, kind of take breaks every once in a while to kind of press down on the plunger or the French press. I'm trying to get out as much of that cold brew as I can because it's like precious materials here. I'm going to transfer this into a jar just so you can see how much it makes. And I do want to mention that this is a cold brew concentrate. You do have to add water to this to make it a standard coffee. So it doesn't look like a lot, but keep in mind we're going to be adding water to this. So it made about 18 ounces or so, and so you're going to add another 18 ounces of water to that. So this makes 36 ounces of coffee, or a little over 4 cups of cold brew. And we are now ready to assemble our pumpkin cream cold brew. There is one additional ingredient that we need, which is evaporated milk. And this is the ingredient that I could not get at my Dollar Tree, but I have seen it at Dollar Trees in the past, so I know you can get it there. And I do want to say that Starbucks uses cream, there's vanilla sweet cream, but this is a good substitute for that because evaporated milk was commonly used as a substitute for whipping cream during times when whipping cream would have been too expensive or inaccessible. This needs to be very well chilled in order for it to whip up. I had mine in the fridge overnight and then I stuck it in the freezer for 30 minutes or so. Into the vessel of your choice, I'm going to start with 2 tablespoons of our brown sugar vanilla syrup. Then I'm going to add in a 1/2 cup of cold brew concentrate, along with a 1/2 cup of chilled water. Top this off with ice, leaving about an inch gap at the top of your cup. And then set this aside for a moment, because now we have to make our cold foam for the top. I'm going to add 4 tablespoons of my chilled evaporated milk, and 2 tablespoons of my chilled pumpkin pie sauce. If you have a milk frother, that is the easiest option, but if not, I'm going to use an electric mixer with only 1 beater attached to it, and I'm going to whip this on high speed for about 30 to 45 seconds. Pour this on top of your cold brew. And if desired, you can finish off with a sprinkle of pumpkin pie spice. And that is a Dollar Tree version of a Starbucks pumpkin cream cold foam cold brew. It's a lot of words. Now I know that this is a lot of steps for just your average morning cup of coffee, more of a special treat every once in a while. And if you're trying to cut back on your Starbucks budget, this is a fun way you can make it at home, if you have some extra time. And it is so good. I don't get Starbucks very often, so I don't have a whole lot to compare to, but I would say it's probably like 80 to 90% identical to the Starbucks version. You guys will have to let me know what you think. How did I do on the Starbucks pumpkin cream cold brew? And if you try it yourself, please let me know in the comments how you liked it. The second pumpkin recipe is the Starbucks pumpkin cream cheese muffins. I love these. I love them when I used to work at Starbucks. I haven't had one in a long time, so we're gonna attempt to make them. This one is a new one. I'm trying out a couple of different things and hoping that they work. I'm just gonna let you guys know ahead of time. So let me show you what I'm gonna be using, and then we'll get to making the muffins. So we have 2 components that we have to make here. We have to make the muffin and then the cream cheese filling. So for the muffin, I have 2 packs of banana nut muffin mix. I got these because pretty much pre-portioned, already has nuts and stuff in the mix, way cheaper than trying to make your own mix. And then I also have some of the canned pumpkin. This is the leftover from the pumpkin sauce. I also have some oil, pumpkin pie spice, and 2 eggs. Into a bowl, I'm gonna add both of my packs of banana nut muffin mix, along with 2 teaspoons of pumpkin pie spice, a ½ cup of oil, 1 cup of pumpkin puree, which should be just about what's left in this can after I use the ½ cup for making this sauce, and our 2 eggs. So as you can imagine, sometimes when I'm coming up with these ideas and I'm trying to use mixes to simplify things and make them more cost effective, there isn't exactly recipes for what I'm trying to do. So I'm usually following multiple recipes and kind of using their ideas as more of a guide as to how I want to go about preparing it, and then just kind of winging it for the most part. But I do have a pretty good idea of what I'm doing because I'll usually look up between 3 to 5 recipes for each meal that I'm going to be making or each recipe I'm going to be trying. I have some leaf themed muffin liners that I got from Dollar Tree last year. I only have a few of them left. I think this is going to make about 12 muffins. I am 1 short of 12. I usually keep backups, although these aren't as fun. They're just more pastel colors. It'll still work. I am going to divide my batter evenly between the 12 muffin tins. I was pretty much right on the money. I'm gonna have just enough to make 12 and a little bit left over, so I guess I could potentially make 1 or 2 more, but I don't really feel like busting out another muffin tin. I have these super cute ceramic dishes that I got from Dollar Tree. I have 4 of them, and I should be able to put some or the rest of my muffin batter in here. And so I can make 1 little pumpkin loaf with the remaining batter. And it's so cute because it says pumpkin spice season, and that's pretty much what we're doing. We're making a pumpkin spice cream cheese muffin. I love getting little trinkets like this at Dollar Tree. They're so fun and they make things present really cutely. So that's my leftover muffin batter. I'm gonna clean up real quick and then we'll get started on the cream cheese filling. Cream cheese filling is really easy. You just need sugar, a block of cream cheese. In the case of Dollar Tree, I have some cream cheese style blend, an egg, and some vanilla. The cream cheese does need to be softened to room temperature. You can do this by setting it on your counter for a little while, or you can pop it in the microwave for a few seconds. My cream cheese has not been softened to room temperature, so I am gonna be microwaving mine. 15 to 20 seconds usually does it. Now I will cream it with a mixer, which I will save your ears from this trauma. In goes a 1/4 cup of sugar and a splash of vanilla. I will add the eggs last. That's just from me because I've made a lot of cheesecakes in my life and you always add the eggs in last, and so I like to do it anytime I'm making any sort of cream cheese filling. Scrape down the sides of your bowl to make sure everything is getting well mixed. So a lot of this comes from my experience making cheesecakes. And now we can mix in our egg, and we're just gonna mix this until the egg is fully combined. I'm going to pour the cream cheese mixture into a bag for piping into our muffins. And I have always wondered if it would be possible to make a cheesecake with the Dollar Tree cream cheese blend. So this is going to answer that question. And I do hope these turn out, but there's no guarantees that it will. Twist up the top so it doesn't explode on you. And pull back in our little muffins here. And I'm going to attempt to cut off the top without losing a bunch of this. Cut off about I'd say about there. That looks good. And now we're gonna, oops. It's quite runny. Ooh, this might not work. But I wonder if that's because it's the cream cheese blend. Let me see if I can do this a different way. Okay, let's try. I'm gonna kind of stick it in there, let it kind of fill up the center, pinch it off. Let's try that. Kind of just letting gravity do the work here. There's always a way to fix every problem. Gonna fill them up a little bit more. It's a little messy, but it should be fine. Can't forget about my other little guy over here. Right, and now we bake. I think 20 to 25 minutes should do it at 350. So they may not look perfect, but they do smell divine. I am so curious to see what the inside of these cream cheese muffins are gonna look like. Hopefully we have a nice, like, hollow center of cream cheese running up the muffin. I have the non-festive liner one, and let's see how this goes. Moment of truth. Let's cut it. Oh, I'm so nervous. Gentle, gentle. Oh, we do have a little bit of cream cheese kind of running down the center there. Not as much as I would have liked, but let's try it and see how it turned out. I'm like 8 out of 10 happy with these because we still have that little run of cream cheese down the center there. We still have some on top, and hopefully it tastes like a pumpkin cream cheese muffin. It is lovely and rich. It still has a bit of the banana taste from the banana nut muffin mix, but it's like spicy banana because it's got that pumpkin pie spice to it. The pumpkin flavor isn't as strong as I would have liked, even though I added almost an entire can of pumpkin. It still has a lovely kind of cheesecakey flavor to it. It's kind of like a spiced banana cheesecake muffin, more so than it's a pumpkin spice cream cheese muffin. It definitely would have been superb if it had just a little bit more cream cheese filling per muffin. So I was scared that I was gonna overstuff them, but I feel like I could have added just a smidge more to each one. Recipe number 3 is a really easy pumpkin loaf. So I have a box of vanilla cake mix, a can of pumpkin, oil, pumpkin pie spice, and 3 eggs. A little bit similar to the muffin recipe, I'm gonna start off with the package of vanilla cake mix. To this, I'm gonna add a tablespoon of pumpkin pie spice, a heaping tablespoon in my case, a half cup of vegetable oil, 1, 2, 3 eggs, and 1 whole can of pumpkin puree. Mix this all to combine. I am currently out of cooking spray, so I'm going to use parchment paper to line my loaf pan. Typically I would use cooking spray as it's just generally easier. If you make a couple snips in your parchment paper where it kind of overlaps, it will fit into your loaf pan a lot easier. And then I like to cut off the excess just because it gets in my way. We can pour in our pumpkin bread batter. This is such an easy, no fuss pumpkin bread. Very little measuring to be done, very little dishes to wash. I love it so much. This is going to get baked at 350 for about 55 to 60 minutes. And there is our pumpkin loaf out of the oven. I'm going to let this sit and cool for about 20 minutes. I'm going to take it out of the loaf pan and let it cool completely. I might even let this cool overnight and check back in with you tomorrow. No pumpkin cream cold brew is complete without a nice slice of pumpkin bread. Let's slice into this. I did take it out. I took off the parchment paper. I let it chill overnight, kept it covered with some aluminum foil so it didn't dry out, and it should be ready to slice into. I was thinking that kind of the unintended premise of this video was that times are hard right now and money is tight, but that doesn't mean that you can't still have some of your favorites if you take the time to make them at home. And things like Starbucks and Crumbl can be quite a luxury experience, especially if you're on a budget, but you can still do it. You can still make it at home and have a similar experience. All right, so I'm gonna start by slicing off the end. So we have a nice clean slice. And then I'm gonna cut these into about 1-inch pieces. And this is cutting wonderfully. Feels very moist. Should get about 6 slices out of this loaf. And something like this can even be frozen. When Starbucks gets them, they are frozen. So if you can get it frozen, you can freeze it. Let's pull out one of our slices here. I'm gonna grab one from the center. And there is our beautiful pumpkin bread. Look how moist that is. It has a nice dense crumb. I think that looks perfect and lovely. Let's warm this up, spread a little bit of butter on it, and give it a taste. I'm gonna try a trick that I saw online, which is about saving an old bread bag just from a normal loaf of bread. And it's a good way to save your homemade bread so that it stays fresher longer. So I'm gonna do that with my homemade pumpkin bread here. I am just gonna put it in the bag like a normal loaf of bread. And this should keep it from drying out because I don't really have a bread box or anything like that. So if you like making your own homemade breads but you want to keep them from drying out, I should have kept the bread ends too. But you can just store it in an old bread bag, save one, keep it on hand, and that should keep on my counter for a few days. I hope my hair doesn't look too crazy. It's a little dirty, and I attempted to style it so that I didn't have to wash it, and yeah. The concept of time isn't really quite here because you're watching this video all at one time, but I have been procrastinating these Crumbl pumpkin roll cookies for the past 2 days, so it is finally time to make them, attempt them, and see how they turn out. So this is not a recipe that I have tried in the past. This is a completely new one. And again, there are no guides for this because a lot of recipes are made from scratch, and I am attempting to use a cookie mix in place of making the dough from scratch. So I'm looking at several recipes and kind of trying to stitch them together to make a cohesive recipe using a mix. But let's go ahead and get started. Sometimes when I'm looking at multiple recipes as opposed to just one, I will stumble across a tip that makes a lot of sense. And in this case, the tip was to dry the pumpkin puree with paper towels before making the cookies so the cookies don't get too wet. I am thinking that about a 1/2 cup of the puree should be enough. Kind of loosely measure that, and then I'm going to set it on a plate. And then we are going to begin to try to remove some of the moisture from the pumpkin with paper towels. And you can already see instantly how wet pumpkin is. So it is soaking through multiple layers of paper towels. So it's probably gonna take me a few to really dry this out. The blog said the drier we can get it, the better, as we can get more pumpkin flavor without a bunch of moisture in our cookies. I feel like you could also dry it out in the oven, but that's gonna take a lot longer, and presumably you're not trying to make these cookies like 2 days in advance, so. But if you are, you can definitely do this in the oven, on a low temperature oven for a few hours. Three rounds of paper towels, and I think we've got out a good bit of the moisture in the pumpkin. I'm gonna set that aside. For the pumpkin base itself, I got sugar cookie mix, but I feel like in hindsight, I should have gotten chocolate chip cookie mix and just sifted out the chocolate chips because really need a brown sugar base. This should be fine. And then of course I also have margarine and 1 egg, just like the first round of Crumbl cookies that I made. Total to make the mix, I need a stick of butter, but I'm gonna reduce that slightly to compensate for the added pumpkin. So I'm gonna use 3/4 of a stick, so about 6 tablespoons. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And soften that in the microwave for about 5 to 10 seconds. We've got the Crumbl cookies pretty much down to a science at this point. I'm gonna cream the margarine along with 1 egg and our dried out pumpkin puree. That dried out really nicely. So far this is working really well. I'm gonna add in my 2 packets of sugar cookie mix and 1 teaspoon of pumpkin pie spice. Let's whip that to mix it. That took a little bit of finessing due to the constraints of my bowl here. But we do have a nice, lovely cookie dough now. Make sure I get everything off of the sides of the bowl. The reason I wanted to use this bowl is because I have lids for it, so I don't have to use plastic wrap, but I'm gonna set this in the fridge and let it chill for an hour or 2. While our cookies are chilling, we need to make the streusel or crumb topping for the pumpkin roll cookies. So I'm gonna do 1 tablespoon of margarine and I'm gonna soften this in the fridge a little bit, or I'm gonna soften that in the microwave for a second. To this, I'm gonna add 2 tablespoons of brown sugar and about a 1/2 teaspoon of that pumpkin pie spice. Might need to adjust this slightly, but I'm gonna mix that together and see how it looks. I feel like that still looks a little wet, so I'm gonna add an additional tablespoon of brown sugar, and just to keep the ratios the same, another dash or so of the pumpkin pie spice. I'm thinking that that still looks a little wet, so another dash of pumpkin pie spice, and it looks like you need about a 1/4 cup of brown sugar total. I can already tell that that looks a lot better. Something like the texture of wet sand at the beach, honestly, was probably a good way of describing what this should look like. And I think we are about ready to get started on our cookies. Hopefully this makes about the same amount. I had gotten some questions about this scoop, and it is not from Dollar Tree. It is an 1.5 ounce scoop, I wanna say. And it is from Taco Bell when I used to work there when I was 18, and I have had it for, I guess I'm 31 now, so long time, 13 years. All right, let's scoop out our sugar cookie dough. The dough is looking a little on the sticky side, which I believe is probably from the pumpkin, and I think that is somewhat unavoidable. But it does look like I'm gonna get about the same amount of cookies, which is 8 out of this dough. Usually, whenever I make these Crumbl cookies, I get somewhere between 8 to 9 cookies per batch. And then I'm going to add a little bit of this streusel Crumbl topping to the tops of each cookie. You can use this to kind of press down the top of the cookie a little bit too. And I anticipate that these are gonna spread a little bit since they are a little on the sticky side. Hopefully they don't spread too much. We are gonna bake these at 350 for 12 to 14 minutes. These look good, and it was closer to 14 minutes. I am gonna tap, 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 try to flatten them out. They're a little puffy. Time to get started on the frosting, which is just a little jar of cream cheese frosting. You can definitely use it straight out of the jar, but I like to give it a whip first to incorporate some air, lighten it up a bit. Give her a whip. I feel like making these Crumbl cookies from Dollar Tree is one of my new favorite kind of hobbies, I guess you could say. I really enjoy the process. I like how they look. They're super cute. A much more cost-effective way to make some of your favorite treats. I transfer my cream cheese frosting into a piping bag, which I put in a drinking glass to make it easier to fill. I'm gonna snip off a corner. Try not to make it too big because we're going for a defined swirl here. I think that looks pretty good. Twist it off. And there's our cookies. Let's see how this goes. All right, so we're gonna start in the center, little blob, and then we're going for like a kind of loose swirl, like a pumpkin roll. Just like that. It doesn't have to be perfect as usual. And usually I find that the first cookie is the one that looks the most wonky, and then you kind of get a bit of a hang of it after a while. Start to get some muscle memory. For not really following a recipe and just kind of winging it, I think these turned out so cute. They might look cute, but how do they taste? That is always the ultimate question. Let's go ahead and try one. At the end of this video, I think I'm gonna be pumpkined out for a little while. The inside of the cookie is very cake-like, I will say that, because I broke one open. They didn't really quite get as flat as I would have hoped, and they're very cake-like, but Crumbl cookies are typically a little cake-like anyways. 20 out of 10. Those are fantastic. If you need something to bring to like a Thanksgiving party or something this year, work, office party, what have you, and you want something that's a little bit classy, a little bit fancy, this is the one to choose. The cookies taste like pumpkin pie. The cookie texture is a little bit cake-like, very chewy, very light, and then you have this crispy topping from the brown sugar and the pumpkin pie spice. It just kind of, it's like candy in your mouth. So you get this light fluffy cake with this crispy candy-like topping, and then of course the soft cream cheese frosting. Everything about these is amazing, and for not having followed a recipe, I'm pretty happy with how they turned out. I have definitely had my fill of pumpkin for sure this episode, but I hope it gave you some good ideas. I really love doing these kinds of themed videos, and I hope you guys enjoy it too. I hope you're having a fantastic day, and I will see you again soon.